Jess Connolly, and you are listening to the Go and Tell Gals podcast. We exist to equip and encourage kingdom women who are using their God-given gifts for the good of others and the glory of God. If you are a mom, a student, an artist, a doctor, we are hoping that this episode will leave you encouraged and ready to run. We're so glad you're here. Let's go. Hi, friends. Welcome to the Go and Tell Gals podcast. It's Jess and Hens today. How you feeling?
I'm good. I'm excited.
Okay, Hens, I want to know how your new year is going so far. How are you feeling? How are the goals? How are the things?
Yes, I feel like the month of January has already been about 6 months long.
Yes.
I feel like January 1st was a lifetime ago and that maybe Christmas didn't happen.
The memes are true. January is 27 months long.
Yeah.
And I can't believe it's not over. It's not even close to over.
I know.
We still have a few days. Whew, okay. So we've been talking a lot about goals in the new year. We've been talking about how to get your heart right, how to make sure you're going in the right direction, how to go slow enough to not strive, how to rest along the way. Now we're talking about how to start over because we're wondering if any of you are like any of us, and maybe you are struggling with some of your goals, intentions, tasks, rhythms of the year. Are there any that you're struggling with personally? I will say I am struggling with some.
It is a little bit of a struggle. I think everyone always has the best intentions when you start the new year and you see the fresh calendar, the fresh planner, or you just, you're excited and you're eager. And I, for one, have a reputation of being a little too eager and taking on a little bit too much. Me too. There's a few things that haven't happened at all.
Yeah.
There's a few things that have had some pivots, but one example that I think of that's just kind of a smaller example was I really wanted to pick back up reading every night instead of scrolling and plugging my phone in a different room so it wasn't even in there.
Yes.
To just kind of set the tempo to be able to go to sleep easier. And so I started off really strong and finished a whole book in a week.
That's great.
Yes. And
already?
then that was it. And then I feel like sometimes this happens to me. I don't know if it happens to you. If you start a new book, you don't have the same momentum. You're sad that one's over. Yeah. And so then you start a new one and then you're like, can't get into it. So I finished one, but I haven't really done anything since then.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you in a second my goal that I'm struggling with, my rhythm that I have really not dug into yet. But here's my question for you and for all of us. Would you rather be the kind of gal, I'm not asking what you are, but I'm asking, would you rather be the kind of gal who tries a lot or puts a lot on her plate and realizes this is not all for me, I need to pull some off? Or would you rather be the kind of gal who's like, I don't know what I can get done, and then maybe you find yourself a little bit surprised by your capacity?
Oh.
If you could pick to be one or the other.
That's a good question.
I don't know.
I don't know. I think I would rather put more on my plate because I have this thing about goals where I'm like, if the goals are super easy, they're not really goals. You should fail a little bit, So I feel like maybe the first girl, I'm not always her, but I think I would want to be her.
Yeah. I think maybe too. I think also because I think a little bit of failure keeps us humble and I think we learn from it. And we always say this in Go and Tell Gals that if we are getting all our tasks done every single week, we might be trying too little.
Right.
I will say that the rhythm I'm struggling with is tea drinking. As I'm drinking coffee, I'm trying to switch to tea after 8:30 a.m. for my sleep hygiene and my caffeine intake. I want to know there are sisters out there who feel me. I used to not be able to drink caffeine after 4 p.m. And then I couldn't drink caffeine after 1 p.m. And now I can't drink caffeine after 10 a.m. and still sleep at night.
Oh, wow.
My body is a sensitive flower. So I'm trying to drink more tea, and I haven't done awesome at that, but I'm working on it. But it feels like a stacking rhythm. When I drink tea, then sometimes I read instead of watching.
Ooh, yeah.
And when I drink tea, I live a more peaceful life. Maybe this is a lie I believe about tea drinkers. Let me know. Are you guys as calm as you seem? We'll find out.
Yeah.
Okay, today's episode, Henslee, who handles a lot of soul care and pastoral care for our team, is going to take us just through some really helpful truths for any of us who need to start over. So whether you're starting over with a goal, a relationship, your calling, whatever that looks like, enjoy today's episode. Hens is going to lead us well. What are you doing March 4th, 2023? Well, let me tell you what I would love for you to be doing. I would love for you to join us for our Rally event. Rally is a one-day coaching event for the woman who wants to set goals that matter and move forward in her calling. This event is for any woman who feels stuck or is having a hard time getting started, using her God-given gifts, or just moving forward in her life. It is for the woman who could use some help clearing the path in front of her, who needs to identify how to kickstart the dreams that God has given her, and who might need a little motivation to keep going. Listen, we specifically planned this event in March because we said, all the gals we know, including us, start January raring to go. And by February, we're disappointed and frustrated with ourselves. And by March, we're really trying to figure out how to move forward and how to do it in a sustainable and life-giving and world-changing way. And that's why we decided to hold this event. Again, it's a one-day coaching event. It's here in Charleston. And by the way, March is beautiful in Charleston. It's from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And we're going to help you with goal setting, dreaming, strategizing, how to take care of your soul, how to build community in a healthy and life-giving way. And we would absolutely love to have you there. The word rally means to bring into order again, to gather and organize or inspire anew. And that is what we are praying God does in your life. Find out more details about Rally at goandtellgals.com. We would love to see you there.
Hi, Hens here. I am so excited to be talking to you guys today, to be in your headphones, to be in your car speakers. If you're cleaning your house while you're doing this, or if you're sitting at your desk at work, we are so grateful that you're listening. So I hope that you will just jump in with me as we are talking about starting over and what that means, what that looks like, and why there's a little bit of fear about it. So at Go and Tell Gals, this year we have been talking a lot about goals, as one does in January. We have been talking about new rhythms as the new season approaches and implementing new and exciting things. I, for one, get so excited when I see a fresh calendar. I get so excited when I have a page to turn and get to write something new. So there definitely is a lot of zeal that comes with the first of the year, but what happens when we need to pivot? And what happens when we need to make a change or we need to start over? So today we're just going to have a little coaching session for our friend that needs to start over. So that could be starting over in our goals. That could be starting over in our relationships, in our life, in our calling. Every day is a new day. There's always a new season. And like we just said, there's always a new year. So whether you're in one of those thresholds or not, it's okay to start over. So let's dig in. I want to start with a few questions that come to mind when I think about starting over. So the first one is, who is telling us that we can't start over? Who is telling us that we can't start over? Is it someone specifically telling you right now that there's something that you want to do that you can't? Is it just our perception of the world or expectations that we have for ourselves? Who is telling us that we can't start over? Number two, what is holding us back from trying again? Is there a weight that we're carrying? Is there a responsibility that we have? What is holding us back from trying again? And then lastly, what are we afraid of and why are we so scared of starting over? Next, I just kind of want us to think about those questions as we go into some short declarations of why we can start over. So the first one is the one that we have to lead with, and it's super powerful and it's so real and so convicting, but starting over is our birthright. It's actually in the Bible that we get to start over and that we get to try again. Revelation 21:5 says, "He who was seated on the throne said, I am making everything new." Then he said, "Write this down, for these words are trustworthy and true." It even rhymes. It's so catchy. It's meant to be there. So I love that we can start with this just because it's so important to know that this is actually biblical and it actually is true, and that we get to start over and that we're not stuck, and that we can always make pivots or changes or just little tweaks, that it's okay, that every single day God is making everything new, and that in the same way we get to try again. The next way of starting over that I definitely want to touch on this morning, that has been real in my life, that I'm sure if you have been on this earth for any amount of time and have been in relationship with any people, then you have done this. But in relationships, saying you're sorry is one of the best ways that we get to start over. In relationship with people, you don't have to cut them out when you feel wronged or when you have messed up. You get to lead with humility and you get to lead with apology. And that is such a gift. It is such a gift that we don't have to be perfect in relationship. We don't have to be perfect in our romantic or marital relationships. We are not perfect in our friendships or with people in our community. We're always going to mess up and we're always going to sin. And that's just the truth of it. It's such a gift that starting over doesn't mean cutting people out of your life or having to make completely new friends. Starting over in relationship usually just takes an apology and leading into a new season. I think about this a lot with sibling relationships or family relationships, that people that you feel the safest with are usually the ones that sometimes you can be the harshest with. And growing up, especially if you grew up with siblings, multiple siblings, then you know that you're not always going to be super nice to them, and you know that you're going to fight and you're going to have to start over. But leading with humility can be so healing in those relationships. And so I would just encourage you, if you're in a place where you feel stuck with a friend or stuck in community with someone, that lead with that apology and just see where it takes you. Let that be your first step. The next point I would love to touch on just for a second here, because it is something that I think about a lot and that I think leads to a lot of the fear in my life when I think about starting over. But it's that starting over does not mean that we are starting from scratch or that we are starting over from the very beginning. It is so easy for me to think that anytime I make a change, that none of the things I did before that mattered. So whether that was a career change or a move or something small, a gym membership change or a neighborhood change or a church group change, the one that came before that still had value and still was worthy. It's so easy for me to get caught in my head and think that the steps that I took before this must not have led me anywhere because now I'm changing my mind. But we get to change our minds and we get to start over. When I was in college, I was a freshman in college. I had just moved out of my parents' house and I started school in August, like most freshmen do, and was super eager. And then a few weeks into it, started feeling funky. A few months into it, I was like, I don't know if this place is for me. And ultimately and prayerfully and with help from my parents and some mentors, I decided that transferring was ultimately going to be my decision. And so I was going to transfer in December. So only have been there for one semester. And let me tell you, I felt so much shame about it. I felt so much shame about these relationships that I had put energy into that now it felt like I was abandoning. I felt shame about making the wrong decision, about picking the wrong college. And honestly, I was so scared to start over somewhere new, especially in January. I don't know why. That was such a big deal to me that I was going to be joining the school year in the middle of the year. So at this point, it was a huge shift. It was a huge change. And it definitely felt like completely starting over from scratch for me. In between my two colleges over Christmas break, I met with one of my mentors from high school, and they said something to me that I will always, always remember. And I have to share with you because it radically changed the way that I think about starting over and I think about making changes. So all they said was, you don't go from point A to point B to point C and then back to point A when you decide to start over. So they were saying, I didn't start at this college and then go somewhere else and go somewhere else. I'm not starting over at point A. You go from point A to point B to point C to point D to point E. You're never going to go back to that starting line. So the things that came before the change and the things that came before starting over were so pivotal in leading you to making that change, and were so important and impactful in leading you into starting over. So I just want to encourage anyone out there that's struggling with the idea of starting from scratch. You're not starting from scratch. Where you came before is what has led you to where you're going to go. Another really interesting thing about starting over in relationships is setting boundaries. And setting boundaries and keeping them and upholding them. I think this is really important to do in relationships. I think this is really important to do in a new job. I think this is really, really helpful to do if we're in a new community or really when we're just starting something new. But I don't know if you're like me, but setting the boundaries is not the tricky part for me. I can set the boundary. I can be very clear in my communication. I can be very clear in what I need and understanding what would be helpful for me in these situations, in these relationships. But it's upholding them that I think trips me up a little bit. So that is just a word of encouragement of something that maybe we can work on together, is setting the boundaries and sticking to them and keeping them. The next big thing is that we have to develop trust within ourselves. If we don't know ourselves, then how are we going to trust ourselves? And if we don't trust ourselves, how can we do any of the things that we just talked about? How can we set boundaries? How can we know when to apologize? How can we know when to make a change? We have to spend time with ourselves to know ourselves. We have to spend time with God to know ourselves. Even if it's something that you just enjoy, find something that you enjoy doing by yourself. So it could be a walk with your headphones in. It could be sitting at a coffee shop and reading a fiction novel. It could be just anything. It could be painting, or it could be sketching, or it could be writing short stories or poems, anything that you can find that you genuinely like to do by yourself. I would just encourage you to do that. Set a little time aside to just spend time with yourself and get to know yourself so that we can make these decisions with a clear head, and we can make these decisions knowing ourselves and knowing what we need. And we can't do that unless we know ourselves. The next big thing is that we have to start smaller than we think. This is tricky because I know for me and for a lot of people close to me, sometimes you wake up with this grand idea and you want to start it right away. And you want to completely just jump ship and start over. Sometimes that looks like moving across the country, quitting our job, starting over, a new community and everything. Sometimes that is like a really exciting business idea, or it's something that you want to start in your community or start a new group or start anything new. It can be this really big, exciting, overtaking thing because you feel so passionate and exciting about it. But we have to think of how we're going to get there first. So we get to start a lot smaller than we think, and we get to just take that first step. And sometimes that first step is writing it down. And sometimes that first step is praying about it. And sometimes that first step is waiting for just a second, just a little pause, and then saying, okay, now I'm ready to dive in and take that next step. So sometimes when we start over and we make a change, we've got to take baby steps. Sometimes, and I'm all for it, sometimes it is something bold and it is something super brave and it has to be big initially. But I think a lot of the times we get to start a lot smaller than we think. I'm not a runner. I've tried. Maybe I'll try again. But in this season of my life, I am not a runner. But I have the joy to be close to a lot of people that are runners and that are amazing at running and love it so much. And it is a really encouraging and exciting journey to witness, watching people go from never running before to running miles and miles every day, or seeing friends finish and accomplish races and even marathons. I was just talking to a friend the other day about marathon training, and that's something that you definitely have to start smaller than you think. For sure. You cannot wake up one day and just decide that you're going to run the full 26.2 miles. There's no way. I don't know. I don't know what would happen, but I know that you have to start a lot smaller than you think. And what was so interesting about this friend is that she runs all the time, and she's even run a marathon before. But still, when you start marathon training, you have to start from scratch. You can't just pick up where you left off. So the visual in my head really helps me when I think about starting over and taking just that first step, that maybe when you're training for the 26 miles, you just start by running 1 or you start by running 2, and you gradually build, and you build on your plan, and you have a plan of where you're going and where it's taking you. Kind of based off of that and based off of the idea of a plan, another little tip is that we can prep for a second day. We get to have a plan, and we get to take our time with making change. We don't have to rush it. And just because we feel that stirring or that burning in our soul to make a change or make a shift doesn't mean that that change is tomorrow. And we get to go slow, and we get to take baby steps, and we get to take it one day at a time. We don't have to jump in. We have to see where we're going to be able to get there. And we have to have a plan. And we have to plan for that second day. I know sometimes, especially at this point in the year, maybe you're already feeling like nothing went to plan. None of your goals and none of your rhythms and none of your ideas went to plan. Maybe you're feeling really stagnant in your job, or like you want to move to a new city, or you want to start a new routine, or start a new fun daily ritual. But we have to have a plan, and we have to take our time with making change and with casting vision. In this plan, it's also super helpful to communicate that vision. So for me, I'm a verbal processor. I like to talk about things. I like to talk about where we're going. I like to express myself in a way that others can respond and speak into it. So when I have a big idea or I want to make a change, I like to tell people where I'm going. So I like to say, is this crazy? Is this so out of left field? And sometimes it's a yes, and that is okay. And sometimes it's a smaller thing that I just really need accountability. So for me, when I tell people about it, it makes it real. And when I take the time to get an idea or a thought out of my head, it makes it real. But that might not be you. And if that's not you, I would just encourage you to write it down. Have a journal, or just open up your notes app on your phone and write down the change that you're feeling. Or just start with where you're feeling a little bit unsettled, or where you're feeling like you want to start over. Just write it down. I think when we get these thoughts out of our heads, they become real, and we can decipher like, yes, this is a great idea. We should lean into that, and we should press in and make a change. And sometimes we write it down, or we say it out loud, and we're like, I think I just had a weird day, or I had something funky going on, and I can revisit that in a few weeks, or I can revisit that next quarter. The last big thing about starting over, and just a declaration that I want to speak over you, is that we get to ask our friends for prayer. We get to invite people into our lives, and we get to invite them into our changes. We get to include them in our starting over. We get to include them in our planning and in our vision casting. We have the gift of prayer and connection with God, and we get to pray with God, but we also get to ask people that we love and that we care about to pray and intercede on our behalf. So if you're feeling funky about a decision, or you are feeling like you need to make a change, I would just really encourage you to go to someone that you trust and just say like, hey, can you just pray about this for a week? Can you just pray about this? Can you just ask God about this? It would really, really help me if you could just pray over this specific aspect in my life. And I'm sure it would be their joy. Before we close out, I just want to finish with a psalm. This psalm is really helpful, I think, in any season that you're in. I think it's really helpful if you're ever feeling stuck, if you're ever feeling down, if you're struggling with something. This was a psalm that my grandma read every single day, no matter how smooth sailing her season of life was, no matter how difficult her life was or is or will be. She wakes up and the first thing she does every single morning is read the psalm. So I wanted to share it with you. It's Psalm 118:24. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. So whether you're in a season where you're full of joy and full of contentment right where you are, whether you're in a season where you wish you were somewhere else, or whether you're in a season where you're excited to make a change, I just pray that we can find joy and gladness in every single day that the Lord's made, and remember that His mercies are new every single morning. If you're looking for some more practical ways to start over, we would absolutely love for you to join us at our rally event in March. It is an event here in Charleston. It's an all-day coaching event where we will definitely be talking about making some steps. There will definitely be action steps, and we will be talking about starting over and how to implement and make changes in our life, specifically in our calling and what God has for us. So if you can, we would love for you to join us here. You can check out our website and the show notes for more information about Rally. If that is just not feasible in the next month or so, we would also love for you to join Go Teams. Go Teams are kind of the heart and soul of Go and Tell Gals. It was kind of what launched Go and Tell Gals initially. And it's such a gift to be able to go through in community. So Go Teams has different steps that you can take that take you through how to get where you want to go in your calling. So we have a podcasting and speaking track. We have a book writing and publishing track. And we also have a ministry track. So if you're interested in Go Teams, check that out. Again, a great way to take some next steps in your calling. And then at the very least, if those things are just not happening right now, we would love for you to join our Go and Tell Gals Facebook community. This is such a lovely little corner of the internet where women from literally all over the world get to come together and connect and pray for one another. You also get insight on what's going on at Go and Tell Gals, whether it's a sale or an event's launching or fun things like that. So definitely check out our Facebook group. We would love, love, love for you to join us there. And we are so grateful. We're so grateful for you listening and joining us today on the podcast. Have a blessed day. We love you.
Thanks for joining us for today's podcast episode. We would be so blessed if you would take a minute to leave a review wherever you've listened to this podcast. You're also welcome and encouraged to share this on Instagram, Facebook, wherever you use social media. We'd also love to hear from you. DM us on Instagram or send us a message on Facebook, shoot us an email. We love to connect with you to hear how we can encourage you and further equip you. God is mighty in you. Let's keep going.